Ooh, another white boy with a podcast. Pronouns, gym bro. Another white boy with a podcast. You want to see the video? It went viral.
Hi gains gurus and welcome to TMGP, the Muscle Growth Podcast, episode 41. I am your host, 𝗏𝗏, and today we are welcoming Haroun Pietersen onto the show. Hailing from Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town, Haroun is a standout figure in South African powerlifting. Despite only beginning his competitive journey in 2023, he has rapidly ascended the ranks to become both the 2024 African Powerlifting Champion and the Commonwealth Powerlifting Champion. At 37 years old and weighing around 104 kilograms, Pietersen has achieved remarkable lifts: a squat of 322.5 kilograms, a bench press of 217.5 kilograms, and a deadlift of 285 kilograms, nearly 3 times his body weight. His journey from local gyms to international platforms is a testament to his dedication and resilience. Beyond his personal achievements, Pietersen is passionate about uplifting his community and inspiring others through his story. He actively shares his experiences and insights on his Instagram account, at @HarounLiftsSA. Haroun Pietersen stands as a rising star in South African powerlifting, making waves at the international level with impressive performances in the under 105 kilogram weight class. At the 2024 World Classic Championships, Pietersen delivered a strong showing, posting a 707.5 kilogram total and setting new personal bests, showcasing not only his raw strength but also his strategic approach to competition. His journey, beginning as a first-year competitor at 37 years old, highlights his dedication and rapid progress, making him a notable figure in South Africa's growing powerlifting scene and a source of inspiration for aspiring athletes across the country. Get ready to be inspired by Haroun's remarkable journey, his insights on powerlifting training, and his mission to uplift others, both in and out of the gym. In today's episode, we dive into a wide range of insights. Some of the topics include Haroun's achievements in the first 2 years of competitive lifting, body mechanics, short versus tall lifters, powerlifting being a marathon as opposed to a sprint, training blocks, sticking to the plan, especially when it's from a good coach, the importance of recovery, not overtraining, sleep, nutrition being fuel for the body, supplements for peak performance, food as an athlete, static holds for body conditioning, overloading versus deloading and programming, and so much more. Get ready for a truly informative episode. Quick shameless self-plug: I'm uploading consistently on Reps with 𝗏𝗏 on YouTube and Instagram, so check that out for some epic fitness edutainment content. A little disclaimer: this show does not contain medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Muscle Growth Podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect my beliefs or the stance of the podcast. While we aim to provide valuable insights and information, it's important to approach all topics with critical thinking. I encourage you to do your own research, consider multiple perspectives, and form your own conclusions. Healthy discussion is always welcome, and I'm happy to engage with listeners in the YouTube comment section to continue the conversation. Lastly, don't forget to follow us on all major social media platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. Find us at the Muscle Growth Podcast and myself at Reps with 𝗏𝗏. Welcome, Haroun, to the Muscle Growth Podcast, where we explore subjects related to muscle science and hypertrophy. I'm thrilled to have you join us for today's conversation. Can you briefly introduce yourself and your journey into the world of powerlifting?
Thanks so much for having me today, 𝗏𝗏. So I'm Haroun Pietersen. I've been powerlifting since March 2023. It was my first competition. Officially, I did a provincial competition in the Northwest because I missed out on my Gauteng entry that year. So I think that was just the beginning of the official competing journey. So that year we've done the SA Championships, which was the SA Raw and 𝗪cie compete in both disciplines, where we managed to finish second in the Raw and second in the equipped. But later on there was a WADA testing done for the person who actually won the 2023 championships and he failed the doping test. So automatically I got upgraded to the South African champion due to an individual failing a doping test after competing in the South African championships. So for 2023, I actually managed to become a South African champion in the very first year I competed in the powerlifting, which was actually a little bit of an afterburner because I didn't get to manage to like celebrate the victory in the time that it actually happened. But it was also an eye opener. It doesn't matter who you are in the sport, WADA or whoever the officials are, the South African drug testing officials, to actually do their job and come to these events to make sure that it's a fair sport. As that's at the end of the day, that's what the essence of it is and why it is a tested federation after all, so that everybody has a fair playing ground, and those who try to take advantage of situations, eventually they do get caught out. I think a little bit more about the journey that year. So I also did the 𝗪𝗿់ឆ𝗂𝗿, and then I did the South African National Championships in the under 120 kilogram class, because that's the weight class I started off with. I was doing the under 120 for the first year, and in the second year we decided to drop into the under 105 in 2024. So we took a bit of a weight loss journey, which wasn't the easiest thing to do. So I dropped about 20 kilos of body weight over a period of time in order to compete in the under 105 in the 2024 calendar year. And we managed to do pretty well in the 2024 calendar year. We finished, in total, we finished first in the provincials. At the national raw, I only managed to place sixth, but I still went on to compete in the World Championships in Lithuania in 2024 as well, qualifying for the South African national squad. So none of the other athletes were able to participate in the championships, so it afforded me the spot to go and actually represent the country in the World Champs. And then fast forward, we went through the 𝗕𝗂𝗃 again. So we did the 𝗪𝗿់ឆ𝗂𝗿 2024, and then we did the 𝗕𝗂𝗃 2024, where I placed gold on the 2024 SA Champs. And then after that particular competition, we then went on to do the 𝗂𝗃 in 3 international competitions. So we didn't do raw at the international competitions, we did the 𝗂𝗃 discipline. So we went on to do the first one was the Africa Asia Pacific Championships, where we placed second. So it was my first official international medal for South Africa, which was an amazing achievement in its own. But just that feeling of getting onto an international stage and winning a medal on behalf of the country, I think that was an amazing time and an amazing experience, going up against some really top athletes from all across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific region. After that, we went on to do the Commonwealth Championships in Sun City in 2024 October, which was an amazing experience because we got to meet a lot of international athletes coming through from the Commonwealth standpoint, as well as just it also ran concurrently with the World Masters, so there were quite a bit of international lifters that came to come and compete in South Africa at Sun City for this particular event. So it was quite massive, and it was amazing to see so many high performance athletes in one place doing the thing and just giving it their all, man. I think that was also one of the humbling highlights of 2024. And then for the African Championships, which was held in Potchefstroom also in 2024 November, that's where we placed first and we won the best lifter in Africa. I think that was like the highlight of the year, because it also then qualified me to get an opportunity to go to World Games this year. So it's official now. I've been invited to represent South Africa in the World Game Championships in China, Chengdu, in August 2025. So I'll be competing in the 𝗂𝗃 Championships for the World Games 2025 in China. And I think that was kind of just a walk down.
Huge congratulations on all of that. That's absolutely spectacular. I think that winning all these competitions in your second year of competing is absolutely incredible. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are very envious of that. But congratulations to you. That's absolutely fantastic. And I wish you all the best for the World Games coming up in China. How are you feeling going into that?
Look, we are training hard at the moment. We in a building block at the moment, so the goals are big for China to put some big numbers on the board, and just I'm still in awe of the whole experience and the opportunity to go and represent South Africa on this kind of platform, because it's once every 5 years that it comes along, and it's so to say the equivalent of the Olympics for a lot of sports. The World Games is our kind of Olympics in the powerlifting. So being able to go up there with the top athletes in the world to be able to compete for a place in the World Games, I think that in itself has just left me in awe, man.
That's so exciting. Well, let's chat a little bit about how you're preparing, the training, that kind of stuff. What are the best tips you can give people looking to get 1/10 as strong as you?
Look, I think one of the important things for me has always been being able to understand and know yourself, and being able to benchmark yourself. So instead of comparing yourself to others and other athletes in other weight classes, other weight divisions, focus inward and try and establish your own baselines. Find what works for you, because a lot of advice sometimes does not apply for everybody. So I'm a shorter athlete, so I'm 175 in height. So a lot of my techniques and my applications for my lifting comes from applying myself with a lower center of gravity. So it gives me a little bit of an advantage over the taller lifters with a longer femur in terms of the squat. That's why the squat is my more dominant lift, because of the shorter femurs in the structural part of the body, where the legs play a major role in your squat, but also the tilt that you are able to control during the squat, I think, is one of the important parts, because that's where your back becomes a leverage point, or it can become a strength or a strained point for a lot of lifters with longer and higher statutes. So people who are taller tend to have a little bit of a difficulty when it comes to the squat with the tilt when the weight becomes heavier. So it's an advantage for them again in the deadlift, where they have longer arms and they are able to lock out the weight a little bit easier. So it's also coming back to understanding your anatomy and understanding your body versus what you're trying to achieve in the sport. I think a lot of the easier things to work on is repetition, repetition, but there are certain techniques that applies to, especially overloading and deloading. So giving your body opportunity to recover is just as important as trying to do big numbers. And I've seen that last year with the number of competitions that we had to participate in. It's brought my recovery time down, and it impacts your body in the long run. And being able to just give your body the opportunity to recover from a so to say power training block. So when you are progressively growing your numbers and you are backing off, take those back offs as your decompression and the time to reset mentally, and also just to understand like where you are going in terms of your body progress. I think one of the bigger challenges for lifters is we always want to be putting on big numbers. We always want to be lifting the heaviest possible. But when we actually engage with our coaches and we take a step back and understand the difference between the programs and the programming itself in order to achieve a peak, so to say, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But the coaches that we find ourselves listening to and being programmed with, I think it's an important part of every lifter's journey to actually be able to get that exposure to what an actual program is supposed to look like and what an actual peak is supposed to look like. One of the difficult things for just a usual gym goer is every week we want to push a PR. Every week we want to do the biggest bench press. We want to do the biggest deadlift. We want to do the biggest squat that we can possibly do. But it's not always sustainable when it comes down to the recovery of the body and the health of the body too. And I think that's where training blocks kind of show you how to build up in different ways, and how strength building doesn't necessarily mean lifting the biggest weight that you can every single time you lift. where the ability to look at a program that's actually going to build strength over time and to gradually build a journey. So it's not something that you're going to get to overnight. Powerlifting, I think a lot of people should try and look at it as a marathon and not a sprint, because you're not going to get longevity when you try to sprint every single time you're hitting your track and you're trying to peak continuously. It's actually detrimental to your progress without you realizing it. So you're going to get strong, and then 3 weeks later you're going to fall flat because you didn't take the time or actually allow yourself the time to progress gradually instead of trying to force a progressive jump. A lot of people and a lot of athletes have different development phases, and sometimes you do take a step backwards too in your training. And that's also in essence of protecting yourself and your body, because I think the biggest challenge for powerlifting is injury and staying injury free. That's one of the hardest challenges to face as a powerlifter is an injury, because that will slow your progress down to a standstill, and you have to rebuild and start rehabilitation over and over, repeating the same thing, where a simple lift that you would have been squatting, for example, 180 kgs for 5 reps, now you're struggling to squat at 100 kgs for 5 reps because of that rehabilitation process. And that's also something to recognize, is listening to your body and being able to, as an athlete, also understand that your body, yes, it's capable, but it also has limits. And in terms of listening to your body, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will always understand or be able to predict something going wrong. But being able to understand that sometimes you just have to say that that's enough for today, and hope to recuperate and come back and fight another day or fight another week out, instead of trying to risk it all just for a training session to suit your mental state or your ego. In that sense, it's difficult to back off sometimes. It is for myself as well. I feel the same. Sometimes you get frustrated with the process, but as an athlete, as a human being, I think a lot of things in life we go through, that it is a journey. Like we grow to an age over time, and we realize as we're growing, we get stronger without realizing. It becomes sort of a reflex. But at the end of the day, training that and harnessing and enhancing the results at the end of the day by creating the consistent flow of effort, as well as giving yourself the opportunity to take time out to actually recover. I think sleeping people take for granted, and I think 8 hours is not an easy target, but that would be at least a benchmark of trying to get that rest in for the body to recover. Younger people can get away with less sleep. For myself, I'm getting closer to a master lifter in the next couple of years, so the sleep actually takes its toll if you don't get enough of rest in, because the body and the muscles don't get enough recovery in. And then at the end of the day, you create a domino effect of struggle, where your body is not ready to take the next steps because you haven't given it the opportunity to actually rest during the period that it needed to recover. So I think there's a lot of basics that we need to stick to with regards to training as well, and also trying to avoid overtraining, because it's so easy to create a problem by fatiguing the body and creating more challenges for yourself in the journey. And a lot of our habits come from habitual gym going, because we do so much in the gym, we want to do more, and we always end up pushing longer training sessions and pushing ourselves in terms of our limits. And I think we sometimes need to be able to pull back from that and actually listen to the guidance from other athletes as well as our coaches, where we find ourselves using the program and sticking to the program, because that in turn gives you the opportunity to actually see the progress and see the building. Though you might not think that it is working in the beginning, but at the end of a block and at the end of a cycle of training, and you actually transition into that peak phases, but then you notice the difference from a athlete's perspective as well as the coach's perspective, and then you can actually feel that gain and that momentum that you've worked for, because it becomes cumbersome and it becomes a bit frustrating when you're in those stages, because you want to get to the peak, you want to get to the exciting parts, but it's also those repetitive patterns that creates the power building within the sport. And I think so for myself, I'm very fortunate. I've got a coach that's coached quite a few South African champions, quite a few world champions. He's got quite a few weightlifting athletes as well. And he's recently done the Africa weightlifting championships in Mauritius, where one of our gym members finished second in Africa for the weightlifting as well. So yeah, so having those kinds of insights and knowledge in the background from a coaching perspective also helps you to understand and grow within the sport, and also to use tactics that will enhance yourself at a later stage. Things that are a little bit out of the box that catches you off guard or by surprise, but that just goes to show the knowledge and the wisdom behind the coaching staff as well in South Africa. There's quite a few amazing coaches in our country that are on the top flight and have gone to world competitions and taken people through their phases and gotten them into situations where they could possibly have taken the gold for South Africa. So having that kind of backing from a team perspective also puts you a little bit at ease when it comes to understanding and listening, because we're all stubborn in certain points so when it comes to listening, because we always know better, but sometimes we just need to take that back seat and listen and actually take the instructions from a coach. Just apply what we're supposed to be applying instead of trying to do our own thing. And I think that's also one thing for young athletes is don't be afraid to seek knowledge from experienced coaches and experienced athletes, because I think that's the one thing about the powerlifting community is that we love to share knowledge and to inspire as well as to help each other. I think that's the biggest part of the sport that comes forward is that togetherness or the camaraderie that comes with the sport itself. Until we meet each other on the platform, we can be best of friends, and then we become competition.
That's amazing. There's a lot to digest there, so I've made a lot of notes. So please excuse me jumping from thing to thing. But I think, do you want to quickly shout out to your coach and your gym on the podcast? Say thank you to them. Give them a little heads up.
Of course, man. Rodney Anthony is my coach from School of Strength here in Hurlingham in Gauteng. He's an amazing coach, and he's got quite a few top athletes coming from his gym. And he himself was a South African champion as well as an international champion in his weightlifting and powerlifting days. He actually revealed something quite cool to me the other day, is that his maximum squat that he did in his competition days as an equipped athlete was 400 kilograms, and I wish to one day be able to squat 400 kilos in an equipped competition. Yeah, so he did a 400 kilogram squat, and that was his maximum squat that he did in his competition days, and that's absolutely astonishing, because for myself, my target for World Games is to do a 350 squat. And that's kind of the benchmark, because we're going to try and break the South African squat record, the South African bench press record of 242 or 240 kilos. So we're going to try and break those two records, and possibly the total record of 862.5 as well. So that's kind of a benchmark that we've set out for World Games in terms of numbers, trying to get to South African records in the squat and the bench press, as well as the total record.
Is that in the under 105 kilogram category?
That's correct, yes.
Amazing. That's so exciting. Well, I really hope you get it. I'm sure you will. Best of luck with it.
Thank you.
And then, do you high bar squat or low bar squat?
So I prefer the low bar, but we do alternate in training. So for strength building, the high bar is actually considered more difficult. than the low bar squat. So we alternate from time to time during our training with the high bar to create more resistance in the squatting, and the straight up position of the back with a high bar creates a bit more tension, and it creates more power requirement in order to squat. But in competition, I do squat low bar. So I don't go super low, but fairly low on the traps and the rear deltoid, and locking it in with a good brace into the back. So it's a little bit of a, I would say, niche thing to do, because not a lot of people like the strain that it puts on the actual shoulders, the wrists, the biceps especially take quite a bit of strain when squatting with this technique, which is something that a lot of people don't even realize, is that your biceps actually contract tremendously when squatting low bar. So a lot of people struggle with bicep cramp during squats, which is something that you wouldn't really think would be a problem, especially considering that squats is a dominantly leg exercise.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's one of the things
And then,
for the low bar
yeah,
especially.
probably if you're doing heavy stuff, like you are, more so than if it's just light. But yeah, um, do you have any other recovery tips? You mentioned sleep, and you mentioned not overtraining. What else could you suggest for recovery?
One of the biggest challenges for powerlifters that compete in weight class is maintaining your weight for weigh-ins, and to be able to make weight for competition. I think one of the biggest things that we need to understand with powerlifting also is we need to fuel our bodies. So maintaining a good level of carbs and protein intake in our diets is essential, because especially when we are training in blocks, and it becomes like a cardio effect. I like to call it cardio when we're doing 5 reps, and a lot of people probably think that's too little reps. But yeah, under the heavy weights, when you're doing up to about 5 reps, and you're doing 3 sets of five at the peak of your set. So for example, this week past we did 220 on deadlifts, so there's 220 by 5 by 3 sets. So you work 15 reps on 220 kilograms, and that's where we are in our deadlift block at the moment. And then for squats, we work 245 by 5 by 3 sets. So those are the kinds of volumes that you kind of end up working to. And if you're not fueling your body sufficiently, not only pre but post workout as well, you tend to lag in terms of recovery. And I think the calorie surplus is a necessity when it comes to powerlifting, because of the amount of energy that you exert, the amount of energy you burn during training sessions, and as well as the amount of energy it requires for your muscles to recover from putting it through the stress. So nutrition plays a major role, and yeah, the fear of carbs can't exist in our world. So carbs are your friend, especially protein as well, high protein meals, especially for the fueling of the muscle fiber recovery, as well as just the general condition of the body, being able to get those amino acids and getting the balanced meals in that are able to give you the micronutrients. And if you can't get the micronutrients you need to actually boost your micronutrient intake by having something that's going to aid you in creating enough micronutrients so that you don't have deficiencies or suffer from cramp, for example. So the magnesium intake, the potassium intake from bananas, all if you understand the micronutrients that your body requires after breaking down and burning out a lot of the salts in the body as well. I think that's also vital to replenish in the process, because the worst thing for training is actually going into spasm and going into cramp, because your micronutrients are running low in the body. And that's also like a lot of the nutritional side of the sport that a lot of people might not think is a necessity. But having a good electrolyte during the training session also aids in keeping those salt levels up. But understanding that things like your zinc and your magnesium and your other macronutrients that play an aid in recovery, especially in the body and the rebuilding of the power, and the lack of salts and energy cells that you do eventually deplete during your training sessions. So just replenishing that and getting the body back to, or giving the body the opportunity to recover and giving it the necessary fuel to grow as well. Like it's very similar to in the bodybuilding world where you actually using the bulk method during these training blocks in order to generate the most energy and to grow and develop lean fibers and get stronger. And then once you get into peak, you're kind of maintaining that level. So then you're no longer just eating for recovery, but you're eating to get stronger. So you eat even more excessively in calorie intake in your peak block. So that's also understanding what you're doing with your diet in certain phases of your training as well. And I think that plays a major role in how effectively you're going to perform and how strong you'll actually get during your block. Because if you are trying to be or trying to perform at your peak, but you're not allowing your body the adequate fuel to get there, you're actually putting yourself backwards in terms of your development.
Absolutely. You made some great points there about the nutrition. I really like the electrolytes during training. A lot of people don't even drink water or electrolytes during training. I'm like, you're there for 2 hours. You should be at least water and probably electrolytes. Maybe I have dextrose and electrolytes, so I get the sugar and I get the electrolytes. And it's delicious, so it's just great. And it helps with the glycogen stores and everything like that. So do you also use sugary something to like help with the insulin or not really?
Not necessarily. So I actually tend to prefer natural sugar intake. So I try and stay away from synthetic things. But for myself, I would use an electrolyte that's from Dis-Chem. It's quite affordable. It's like $150 for a pack of 30 little fizzies. So I'd like to use that. And then I take a pure creatine just to boost the recovery, because that's also one of the things that depletes in the muscle. So I use a creatine monohydrate just to make sure, because I'm not always going to be eating a steak to replenish my creatine level. So just to those days that I'm having my chicken and other alternative proteins, I like to have a little bit of creatine just to boost the muscle levels again, so it replenishes and keeps that resistance and endurance when it comes to the training as well. A lot of people use whey proteins that contain stacks and things to that effect. But at the moment, I'm not even using pre-workout anymore, because I just use a micronutrient which is called 𝗪𝗏, and that sums up. Basically, it doubles up on electrolytes as well as the micronutrients intake for the recovery, and it helps a lot with the hydration as well, the hydration levels of the body. Um, and it maintains pretty well as well, and it also gives you quite a bit of an energy boost. It does have a little bit of sugars in there as well, and I think that's about the extent of it. Other than that, my nutrition my main nutritional sources are food. I don't do any whey proteins of any sort, and yeah, that's basically my diet and how I like to boost and feed the body. But yeah, also understanding which foods get you your amino acids and which foods get you your required monomers for the building of your protein absorption and that type of thing. So I think for me, the easiest ones are the best balance, which is uh, the basics, which is the boiled egg. I think that's one of the better balanced sources of amino acids, as well as a good beef intake as well. So lean beef also gives you quite a good intake of balanced amino acids. So yeah, just understanding what foods you need in order to, because a lot of people can micro supplement and do it that way, but I prefer getting my nutrients from food. It also helps with the recovery at the same time, so I get the best of both worlds.
How many eggs do you have a day? And what is your total calorie intake? Carbs, fats, proteins, do you know?
I don't really track it that often, but I think for myself, like when I need to supplement and I'm not having like a raw oats or a prepared oats breakfast, then I would have 4 boiled eggs for breakfast, just as a start off on the daily, which is not too intense, and then I'd load up with our home cooked meal with either legumes or steak or something that's high in protein and fiber at the same time. So it's a little bit of a balance of everything. So trying to maintain like calorie intake, because I also have a high energy consuming job where I walk like 14 to 16,000 steps in a day. So I tend to burn a lot of energy. So that also makes the requirements for eating a bit higher. Then I also keep some fruit in the diet, so an apple, an orange, a banana or two, just to keep the potassium levels going. But I think in general, I would average on about 3,000 to 3,500 calories of intake in a daily basis when I'm not on a peak cycle. On a peak, I tend to have an extra meal just to boost before training and after training recovery. So then I would have actually 4 or 5 meals during the day when I'm on a peak cycle, so that the body can just ingest and also refuel for the next sessions to come. Because when you're peaking, you're kind of pushing your limits uh, to the peak of its capability, and doing that takes quite a bit of energy from you, as well as quite a bit of mental strength when you get to those phases of the training. So yeah, you kind of doubt it in the beginning because you don't feel used to what you've done in the previous peak, because it's been such a long power block cycle. So like I think on Sunday, yesterday morning we were squatting, and just to get me used to the weight on my back, we just did static holds. So we just took 275 on the bar and just stood there with it, and then we pushed it to 305 and just stood with the weight on my back, just so that my body can get assimilated to the next session of pushing the limit again, because now we're going to go into a peak block and kind of just feel what the body's doing, do some negative work. So coaches already set a guideline for our block to end at about 330 for this particular squat session. So we'll go up to 330 and then we'll do negative 330 repetitions just to feel the weight into the sink point, and to feel the weight out on the body, and to also neuro shock is something that we experience during powerlifting when you put a weight on your back or you pick up a weight that you've never done before, and the body kind of goes into a little bit of muscle shock. So a lot of people experience DOMS from overexertion. So something that you experience in the powerlifting space is actually actual neuro shock to the body. So your body adjusts to the heavy weight that it's never felt before. It kind of goes through a little bit of shock, and then all of a sudden you realize that your body has adapted. So the next time you feel that same weight on your back, it completely blows you away by how much lighter it actually becomes. And that, I think that's one of the phenomenons with when it comes to the powerlifting and heavy lifting itself, is that your body adapts so quickly to the change of environment that you actually kind of shock yourself when the second or the third attempt at that same weight goes, and it moves a lot better, it moves quicker, and you almost you're in disbelief of yourself, but then at the same time it gives you this confidence boost going into your peak, and feeling that strength and that power that you've built through a process of training, and understanding that development comes from phases and not just peaking 300% of the time.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned something that Austria's strongest man, 𝗵𝗫𝗄 𝗵𝗫𝗀𝗃, mentioned, and that is the static holds. He also is a big proponent for static holds and increasing the muscular ability, even not lifting it, just taking out a big weight and telling your body, hey, we're going to be doing this soon, like get ready. So he also uses that, and he's Austria's strongest man. So here we have South Africa's strongest man, Austria's strongest man. You need to keep those countries falling, eh? Um, and then you mentioned can't always be lifting your heaviest. You need to peak. What's the importance of programming, and can you explain a little bit about overloading versus deloading? Like, obviously everyone gets like the basic concept, like, okay, this week we're going to lift more than last week. That's progressive overload, and next week we're going to lift a little bit less because we've fatigued the body. But can you go a little bit deeper than just the basics of the overloading versus deloading?
So I think for powerlifting, in essence, the block and how the development blocks work. So there's different styles that different coaches apply. So my coach, for example, at the moment we're on a fives program. So every single lift that we do, whether it be squats, bench press, or the deadlift, we're on a five cycle. So at the peak of the repetition, so when we get to the peak set, so, for example, this week, this training or the past week that we've trained, we did the bench press, but we did an equipped bench press. So I put the vest on, and we start with the raw lift, and we only do, because equipped is a little bit different to the raw lifting. We only do minimal reps when it comes to the bench press. So, for example, we started off with 5 reps on an empty bar, which is just a warm up. Then we would move to 75 for 3, 125 for 2, and then we'd move to 140 for 1, and then we put the vest on, and then change over the weight to, so we increase the weight to 165 when I put the vest on for the double. But because the weight is not heavy enough, which is something strange to say, it doesn't actually touch my chest with the vest on. And we just do the 2 repetitions, and we increase to 185, and then we actually get the bar to touch me. So then we did 2 sets of 2 reps with 185, and then we finished off with 185 for 2. So 195 for the double was the bench workout with the vest. Because the vest programming works a little bit different to the conventional raw lifting. So the coach that I have is versed in both disciplines, and he's really good with the equipped as well, and setting up of equipment and understanding how the body operates within this single ply world that is equipped. And then for the deadlifting, we've been doing deadlift raw, so no equipment, no suit on, just to get the body used to the movement and getting stronger with the deadlift, because the deadlift has been lagging quite some bit this year. So I've also competed this year in the SA Champs raw and equipped. I won the equipped for SA 2025, and I placed 4th in the raw for SA 2025. So with that, we also had a little bit of a sticking issue with my deadlift not improving. It's kind of gone backwards. That's why I was saying, like, during your training blocks, you'll find that sometimes you go up, sometimes you won't find that peak again, and then you kind of hover for a while. And developing now and trying to get past those blockages is what my coach is working on with me. So we've integrated a few different things into the program. So the deadlifting would then go from an empty bar at 5 reps all the way up to 220 for 5 reps. And then at 220 for 5 reps, we do 2 additional sets of 5 reps. So then becomes the peak rep, or the peak set will be 220 by 5 reps for 3 sets. So that's how the deadlift block would then finish off in terms of building on that strength and the development. So to put it into perspective, the start of the block, we started at 205, and now we've progressed last week to 215, and this week we've done 220. So now the next week, coach will, one of the things that my coach doesn't do, he doesn't tell me ahead of time what we're going to do. He kind of just keeps it for each workout. I discover what I'm going to do at the workout, so I don't have too many mental challenges with thinking about it too much before the time. Just come in and do the work, basically. And then similar for the squat, we've worked up from 225 to 245 to 255 last week. So those have been progressively how the block has been. So the 225 was just the raw squatting, no straps or wraps that they put around the knee for the equipped lifting. So I haven't done any equipped lifting with the knee wraps for 2 years now. I've been using sleeves, but recently there was an IPF decision made about the stiff sleeve being used in the IPF. So now we're back to using the normal neoprene SPD sleeves. It's been an adjustment within the raw environment. But in the equipped now, because it's fully equipped, so we're allowed to use knee wraps. And just adjusting to using knee wraps again, it's been a challenge, because it's quite difficult to move in these things. It looks like fun and games, but it's actually quite painful, which is one of the things with equipped lifting that comes that's very different from the raw lifting. Is the equipment you use actually creates quite a bit of tension on the body, as well as the knee wraps. It's lovely. It takes a bit of your skin off when you wrap and you actually squat in them and you take them off and you can feel that little bit of a breeze on your open torn skin. It's quite fun. So you get to, it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship, I would say, but it's also how you go through the programming and how you get used to operating the equipment. Because the thing with the equip lifting is that it's how you find your groove and how you find your rhythm and your movement and how what's more efficient for yourself once you put under pressure. Because the amount of pressure actually restricts the amount of movement. So you have to kind of find that balance of how you're going to move and how you're going to be able to hit depth, for example, in the squatting once you have those knee wraps on. First time I put knee wraps on, I actually couldn't move. It was quite amusing. I just stood there. I couldn't pick up the bar. I couldn't do anything because my body just went into I don't know what I'm supposed to do mode. And that was quite entertaining. My coach and I had a good laugh. Now I'm getting a bit better. So with the squats, with the knee wrap now, we've done 245. Previous week, this week we took 255 out, but we also had a bit of turbulence during the last session, where we kind of didn't know what was happening with the movement and why my body was reacting the way it was. So we took a step back and actually just focused on singles, because we thought my coach just figured, look, I think we're thinking about these reps too much, so let's just break it down and make it simpler. So I took out the bar for single actually with the knee wraps on, just to get used to the idea of moving. So we're still working on a few glitches with the equipped lifting. But I think one of the biggest parts for the power building and going into peak. So when we reach, for example, the peak of this block, I would estimate it to be around 275 or 285, maybe even 295. We will still be doing reps in the squat, for example. For the deadlift and the bench press, we're working towards a marker of 250 in the bench press. So I would say around 230, 235, maybe even 240 for the double is where we will probably work up to in terms of that block. And then for the deadlift, which is the lagging lift, the target for the deadlift is you just get past the 300 marker. So we'll probably be working up to about 255, 260 for 3 to 5 reps, depending on how the block moves. And that's kind of how the indicative balance. So when you get a bit higher up in the weight, sometimes your coach will bring down the repetitions, or they'll maintain the 5 repetitions in terms of how your body responds to the training and the block itself. So it's a lot of monitoring that goes into the development of a powerlifting block, as well as watching your athlete perform and seeing if your athlete is actually I don't know if you're familiar with the RPE method that's applied in a lot of powerlifters. So my coach doesn't necessarily apply the RPE mode. He prefers to observe his athletes and to watch how they perform and how they're peaking and how their body is responding to certain parts of the blocks. So a lot of people would apply the RPE method, where they would say this is the max exertion, or it would be a 8 or a 9 out of 10 for argument's sake in the RPE range. And for my coach, it's not really a terminology we use during training, but it's also something that's applicable out there for a lot of other powerlifting coaches that apply an RPE method for determining how the athlete should peak and what their capability should be like, or their range would be like in terms of peaking their strength. Yeah, I think that in terms of building blocks is like it becomes a bit complex once you start integrating the more intricate things like an RPE range, or a stage, or I would say a peak block is generally broken away after a volume block. So it's broken up into those two main characteristics, which is a volume state of training versus a single state of training, where you kind of go into a peak and you only do singles building up to a maximum weight. And those would be the two different stages that we go through as powerlifters. So one volume block, and then after the volume block, we'll go into a peak block. Some people would do 3 volume blocks and then a peak block. Some people would do 2 volume blocks and a peak block. Some people would do one volume, one peak, two peaks even, and then go back to two volume blocks. And it varies from coach to coach and the methods. And also the athlete's capability of maintaining the stress on the body, because peaking is the most stressful on the body, as well as the volume blocks, where I tend to call it cardio, because that's what it feels like to us powerlifters, like our coaches making us run up a mountain, and it's never ending, reps after reps. But it's also builds that resistance and resilience when it comes to going through the peak and getting stronger when you actually put that heavy weight on your reps, and you'll see the progress that comes from that repetition.
Thank you. That was very thorough for the periodization and the blocks. So thank you for that. And then I was wondering, can you please educate me and maybe some of the listeners? I've never done any equipped training, so I don't actually know like the difference between a vest and a suit versus having a sling on the bench press, sleeves versus wraps. Like, when you said, for example, for the bench press, you have a vest, is that the same as the suit? And then do you also have a sling? Or is that a different competition entirely?
To hear Haroun's answer and to learn more about the various different kinds of powerlifting, you're going to have to tune in again next time on the Muscle Growth Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Muscle Growth Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and reach more people just like you. Don't forget to follow us on all major social media platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. Find us at the Muscle Growth Podcast and at Reps with Roscoe. For more insights, exclusive content, and full episodes, visit themusclegrowthpodcast.com. Your support truly makes a difference, so please like, share, comment, and follow. We're grateful for every bit of it. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and staying focused on getting bigger, stronger, and better.